Welcome to the Cowtown Cats Lacrosse Podcast, where we talk all things Panther City Lacrosse Club. Now here are your hosts, Nicholas and Andy.
Well, Panther City came home hoping to start the season at 2-0, but Las Vegas came in looking to play spoiler and continue to improve on their second season in the NLL. Welcome everyone to the Cowtown Cats Lacrosse Podcast. I'm Nicholas, of course joined by Andy.
Hello, hello.
Panther City may not have been the featured game of this week, but they were the only game on Sunday, and this is just something with me, with the NLL. I would say whenever you have a game like that, you probably should maybe highlight it slightly more. I mean, they talked about it afterwards, but I feel like this was a game that could get some good eyes on it, especially how the game went. But both of these teams improving from last year as they go along into this year.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like a bit of a missed opportunity. Like, if you're a box lacrosse and an NLL fan, then you basically got one show to watch. Yeah, I think it's something that they could have, like you said, marketed a bit better. But hey, what can you do?
Right. And you know, again, in Texas, where it's already a hard sale, it would have been good to have a little bit more eyes on that. But, you know, I think the NLL as a whole is just trying to grow it a little bit at a time, and that's just part of the growing pains. You have to learn what works and what doesn't, what you should do more of. But hopefully that's something we see not only as this season goes on, but as the years come in going forward. But coming into this game, I mean, we talked about it a little bit last week. You know, Panther City started off the year with a win in Vancouver. Las Vegas, a very close game against Albany, losing in Vegas. But, you know, Vegas, I hate to say it, but I think we kind of underestimated them coming in a little bit. But one thing, you know, coming into Sunday's game against Vegas was we had two Rookie of the Year finalists from last year going against each other.
Yeah, and it's funny. From what I remember, we actually drafted Jack Hanna, but Vegas ended up scooping him up in the expansion draft. So who knows? We would have had a three-headed monster with John Donville, Jack Hanna, and Gauthier had he stuck around with the team. But hey, it's a nice thing for Vegas to have a player of that caliber starting out.
Well, yeah, and it's a good starting point for them from last year and going into this year. But yeah, right. Donville versus Hanna, that was kind of interesting. They showed some stats midway through the game comparing their last seasons. It was kind of funny how close they were to each other, to be honest.
Yeah. The point totals were pretty impressive from two rookies. Hanna was probably more of a guy who looked a bit more for his own shot and got assists here and there on the side, whereas Donville was definitely the key playmaker in Panther City's offense.
Yeah, which earned him that Rookie of the Year status from last year. But, you know, we came into this game looking to keep the momentum from last week with that win over Vancouver. And honestly, I think we kind of joked about it last week. I was expecting Vegas to be up, you know, 2-0 within the first few minutes, but it's kind of the opposite. Right at the bat, kind of within the first few minutes, Crawford picking up where he left off last week. He gets the first goal right off the bat.
Yeah, it was a great corner shot past Landon Kells, who himself, we'll get into it later, had a pretty good game in net. But yeah, just Crawford doing what he does best. Again, they don't call him Showtime for a reason. And he hit some monuments in this game that we'll probably go over a little later as well.
Oh yeah, he had himself another night, which is always good to see for our side. But yeah, that score put us up 1-0 pretty fast. And then not too long after that, it was kind of an interesting sequence. Like, there was a Vegas turnover that led to a power play that led to Gauthier getting a goal and going up 2-0 before we knew it.
Yeah, and he had a couple of these last year too, if I'm not mistaken. Basically, they got the ball moving around enough to where eventually there was a soft spot on the defense. Crawford was doing his usual song and dance, and he got it over to Donville, who quickly passed it to Gauthier, who got in a quick strike before Kels could react to it.
Yeah, and it was good to see kind of the offense, you know, picking things up a little bit right off the bat, which, you know, is something we hope to see as the year goes on, because we want to see that offense keep steady throughout the game. And it was good for them to start off that way. Even on the defensive side, like, you know, we had a penalty against us, and we killed the penalty. I mean, Daymud was playing good right off the bat. It's kind of like opposite of the start of the game from last week.
Yeah, it's funny. It's it's very rare that our offense comes out of the gate, and they might score and tie the other team, but to take a 2-zip lead and then be able to kill off penalties the way they did, play solid defense. It was a very nice start those first few minutes.
Yeah, but as we talked about earlier, Vegas is a good team into their second year, and you can only keep good teams down for so long. They kind of started getting things together. They got 2 quick goals kind of in a row almost that tied us 2-2. Again, it wasn't a case so much of the defense not playing bad. It was just Vegas was starting to play better as the game went on.
Yeah, Connor Kurt's first goal from what I remember, he shot it through traffic, got it past Daymud. It's really nice. And then the fact that they scored soon after that with Gagliardi kind of jumping up in the air and off of an offensive board to get it past Daymud as well. It's like, oh shoot, these guys they're not going to be as phased as easily as they might have been their first year in the league.
Oh yeah, especially that game when we had against them in Vegas, where it was kind of our offense kicking things off, and we just never looked back. And I think they learned a lot from that first season, just like we did. First season and the second season, how to kind of weather the storm and kind of move forward and be able to fight back and say, hey, this isn't a huge deficit. But tied us up at 2-2. But finally, the rookie Knox that I was kind of hoping to score. I was hoping he would have scored last week, but he finally got his first career goal, puts us up 3-2. The rookie finally showing up.
Yeah, and that was an excellent play because you basically had Will Malcolm starting with the ball. He got it over to Knox, and he cut towards the middle. However, rather than getting Malcolm the ball, Knox just kept it, waited for Malcolm to suck in the defense, and then went in for a pretty nice shot from his side of the net. And so it was great to see him score his first one. For sure there will be many more for him to come.
Yeah, and that's not to overshadow other rookies that showed up during this game too. We'll touch on him later. But it's good to see him get his first goal out of the way. I think it kind of puts the nerves aside, you know what I mean? Just kind of says, all right, well,
yeah,
now I can move past that. I don't have to worry about getting my first goal. Now I can focus on everything else. But that goal, it was fun. It was nice. It was good to see him get his first goal, but it was short-lived. Vegas again scored, tied us up 3-3. Honestly, at that point, it eerily felt like last week's game. The offense and the defense, were playing good, but it was just kind of slow going maybe at first. Huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty much foreshadowed that this would be a back and forth, neck and neck affair. And that third goal, man, talk about unlucky. Basically, Hellier shot it strong enough to where it hit Daymud's shoulder and ricocheted backwards, just kind of softly rolled in. Seeing that live, it was just kind of me and a few of the other fans in attendance, you could tears kind of like chuckling, like, well, them's the runs sometimes. That's what happens.
Yeah, it literally had enough spin just to once it landed, it just kind of kept rolling a little bit more. Yeah. Which I hate to say, foreshadowing for later on in the game, but but yeah, going in after one, it was tied 3-3, so it's just kind of okay. Now we are to the point where we were last week, where all right, well now we need the defense isn't playing bad, but now we need the offense to pick back up again, and so. Going into the second quarter, I was like, okay, well, come on, offense, let's do it. But again, Vegas weathering the storm, they scored in a few minutes into the second. They're up 4-3, and it just seemed like our offense couldn't get things going.
No, yeah, and credit to Vegas's offense. Casey Jackson, who had a good first week for them, he snuck one past Daymud in the defense. The Panther City offense in general just seemed a lot more discombobulated after the hot 2-0 start. And so many of the goals that we would have later on kind of were more Callum Crawford doing his thing or other guys just kind of going one-on-one. As far as team play goes, credit to Vegas's defense, but yeah, they just did not seem to be clicking.
Well, and we'll definitely touch on it at the end of the game because Coach TK had a few words to say about that, especially on the offensive side. But you talked about Crawford. Uh, Again, he kind of put the team on his shoulders real quick and said, "All right, well, I'm going to keep doing my thing." Then he gets a score, puts his ties it up 4-4, and then Donville shortly after he stepped up, got a goal. Next thing you know, we are up 5-4, but it was more of the excellent play of not only, reigning rookie of the year, but Crawford as well, doing his thing.
Oh yeah, and that was a classic Crawford. He completely fooled the defender with that pass fake. He pretty much fooled me as well. And then he had his trademark shake and bake where he's just twirling the head of the stick around before getting it past the goalie. It was classic Showtime for sure. And then Donville's score soon after that was again, it was good to score. He basically scooped up a loose ball, and before the defense really could react, they were kind of playing lackadaisical, and he was able to drive it in and get a 5-hole on Kells. So awesome. It was great to get the lead back. However, like we alluded to, it was kind of more singular brilliance than it was a real cohesive team unit.
Right, which isn't, I mean, you're never going to fault a player for being really good at his job and doing that kind of thing, but it's not disheartening. I don't want to use the word disheartening, but it's also just like, all right, well, they're showing up now. The rest of usually those players that you see the rest of the offense, making plays and doing what they need to on the offensive side, we just weren't seeing that early on. And I mean, it was glad. I was glad Crawford is on our team. That's all I gotta say. Because I mean, we were up 5-4. There was a lot of physical play too during those sequences. I mean, it seemed like, I don't know. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make the game. You were there live. It just seemed like there was a little bit more chippiness in the second quarter, and then as the game went on as well.
Oh yeah, and the fans in attendance are definitely hooting and hollering, trying to rile Vegas up. One thing they mentioned when I watched the replay of the broadcast was that given the short but colorful history of these two teams with Tyler Burton and I don't remember the Vegas player, but with them getting it into it during Vegas's home opener, you could tell there's a little bit of bad blood from the first season they played each other. But with it being the first half, the chippy plays pretty much, both teams have to be smart in terms of not being a man down for an extended period of time early on. So you're going to get in your chippy and cheap shots where you can, but otherwise remain on the field.
Well, and credit, I hate to say it, but credit to the refs for kind of keeping things in check for the most part. I mean, you let a few things go, but, it seemed like when it was starting to get to a certain point, they stepped in and, that's what a ref's supposed to do. They're supposed to remind the teams, hey, you still got a game to play here. But, even with the chippiness and the physical play, Crawford still did his thing. He scored again a few minutes before halftime. I mean, it puts us up 6-4. And I just felt like, oh, hey, there's Crawford. Again, from game 1 to game 2, he's just like, hey, there's going to be moments where stuff isn't working for us, and I'm just going to have to step up. And that's what he did. So, going into the half, 6-4, but Crawford and Donville kind of the main reasons for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Callum Crawford, he's been in the league for so long. He's a great offensive safety valve, or safety net for sure. But over the course of an entire season, you don't necessarily want to rely on a single or just a couple of guys to get things going for you. You really want everyone to be engaged and involved so you can spread the wealth around and keep defenses honest.
Yeah. Well, and I think that goes to say a lot too about just, halftime adjustments. I'm sure Tracy Kelusky talked to everybody at halftime, telling players, hey, start stepping up and stuff. One thing he did change, and they mentioned this on the broadcast, after halftime, Evan Messenger taking faceoffs. That was just kind of an interesting change. I think he was just kind of switch things up a little bit just to make things a little different. But I don't know. I think I don't know if that's the first time I've seen him take faceoffs. Probably not, but it's been a while.
I think he might have taken a few last year, but man, we'll go into this later, but they are really missing Tyler Burton, who, based on what the telecast said, they're not even sure whether he's going to play this season. So not sure what the extent of his injury is. Hopefully he gets well soon. But yeah, face-offs were a big problem in this game, quite frankly, and Messenger going out there taking a few. I think Coach TK is just trying to find some semblance of success. The tough thing is, these defensemen and transition players, they're gonna do their best, but I think unless you're a real dedicated specialist in doing that, then you're gonna have trouble against the other teams in the league that do have guys dedicated, like Trevor Baptiste.
Well, and they ran into that same problem last year for a few games. It seems like they were trying just different people for face-offs, trying to figure out, what to do, especially since they lost Thompson in the offseason last year. But, I mean, I guess a quick off question to that, would a more bigger physical player, even if he isn't on the defense, like a Sheridan, even though he's rookie, but do you think somebody more physical, if you can get him some reps, might be a more effective face-off person?
It's hard to say, honestly. I don't know that they'd want to... Part of me is thinking that they'd want to conserve a guy that's more of a scorer for the offensive side of the ball, just so they're not getting beat up as much. If they were... I could see someone like Medeiros or Tony Malcolm, or I think last game we saw a decent amount of Brandon Goodwin in the circle. So, yeah, I don't know whether... We do have a lot of big guys on offense now, which would certainly help. Where I saw success last week, even if we weren't winning the face-off, Goodwin and company would flick it where they could to a teammate. And I actually saw, I don't remember who Vegas' face-off guy was, but I saw them doing that a decent amount with success.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure it all depends on who's taking face-offs and what strategy they want to go with. But yeah, I just thought that was kind of interesting. Messenger taking face-offs going into after halftime. But, again, Vegas just not really going away, and they stuck to their guns because, I mean, they scored. They were still down 6-5, but all of a sudden, we're kind of trying to keep them more in check, and that didn't work very well because next thing you know, we had kind of like a breakaway turnover, and Vegas scored again, and they were tied 6-6, and I was just like, wow. I mean, Vegas, I hate to say it, was kind of looking like the better team at that point.
Oh yeah, and that was Rob Hellier's third goal of the game. That one in transition that got us, and so we were letting him get off, which definitely didn't help our chances later on. So yeah, just that feeling. We've used the term discombobulated a couple of times tonight, but I guess what started with the offense not really clicking seemed to kind of carry over with the defense to some extent. It was a relatively low scoring game overall, but there were certainly pockets of inconsistency on both sides of the ball throughout.
Yeah. Well, and I will say this. I mean, after that breakaway goal, it did seem like the offense semi got on the same page for a few minutes. I mean, it happened last week too. That's why like last week's game and this week's game had like some similarities because again, we went almost 2 minutes straight just in their offensive possession, getting rebounds and getting second shots and stuff. And that was great to watch, but not really a whole lot coming from that. I don't know. It's like a positive, but also at the same time a negative.
It's great that the effort is there, but I don't want to use the term wasted effort, but if you're getting like 5 or 6 loose season offensive boards in a row, but they're not leading to any points, which at the end of the day is what's going to win you the game. It's just a tough situation.
Well, yeah, and that was all. I think that was minute for like 7 to minute 5 of quarter 3. So we're almost done with the quarter. You think to yourself, well, not a whole lot more is going to happen going into the fourth, but no. I mean, Donville showed up again. He got a great diving goal by him, by the way. I mean, that was I think that was his record for 100th career point. Puts us up 7-6. Honestly, that I thought that was a great play. Not to be outshadowed by anybody else doing anything that night.
Yeah, that was awesome. And, you kind of expect that from like Gautier or Phil Caputo or those guys that tend to play a bit closer to the basket or to the net. Donville is generally up at the top of the key, so the fact that he was able to do that, and we basically saw what would be a dunk from Donnie, it was pretty cool. So it's awesome to see that he has that kind of offensive versatility.
Well, and it's crazy to think this is his second game into the second season he's been here, and he's already at 100 career points. So that's good for his track record. But great play by him, puts us up 7-6. Vegas still keep coming back though. They tied it 7-7. But the rookie that showed up last week showed up again. I mean, his presence was definitely felt in that third quarter. Very physical again. And he gets a very physical diving goal. I mean, honestly, that's one of my play of the game contenders right there. But he puts us up 8-7, keeping things close. But again, Sheridan, a very physical presence out there on the floor.
Yeah, I think the Panther City social media team agreed with you on choosing that as their play of the game. It's great to see the rookie play with that much confidence. I know we talked about last show how he had that between the legs behind the back attempt that didn't go anywhere, but it shows he's not afraid to get creative with his shot making, and this time it worked out for him.
Yeah, and it's good to see him getting into a good rhythm early on in his first season as well. But we're up 8-7, and this is where the chippiness kind of showed up again right at the end of the third quarter. A little bit of a fight breaks out. Next thing you know, we're 4-on-4 going into the fourth, even though we're up 8-7.
No, yeah, and it's always kind of it's fun to see those kind of man down matchups, just the different dynamics when each team has one less guy on the floor or even less, depending on how many guys are in the sin bin.
Yeah,
but yeah, they definitely. There's certainly no love lost between these two teams.
Right, which again, I mean, I know they're not considered probably an official rivalry, but I just feel like there's a little bit of that chippiness, a little, angst against each other kind of thing. But, going into the fourth, I kind of felt like it was closer than I obviously wanted it to be. But considering, again, I think we both kind of said, and now again, I'll admit, I expected a blowout. I expected our offense to show up this week. But again, you expected something close and for us to hopefully pull away in the fourth. So it was along what you expected as far as this game going.
Yeah, definitely. Games like that, the 9-3 win last season was definitely an outlier. Vegas, they've obviously improved this year. We're improving too, but there's some new pieces we're still trying to fit in. So, and then after that you mentioned it earlier, that close loss to Albany last week, Vegas was definitely. We'll talk about Albany a little bit later, but Vegas certainly gained confidence, even if that was a loss, to know that they'd be able to hang with teams throughout an entire game, and they certainly showed that against us.
Oh yeah, and I think Panther City as a team too maybe had, we'll talk about it afterwards, but maybe a mindset of, hey, this is their second season. We remember our second season, but we're in our third, so we should be able to handle them pretty well. Mm-hmm. I think they were having a harder time than they were expecting, but going into the fourth, 4-on-4 for a while, and then Caputo, we talked about last week, you can only keep a good man down for so long. He was in the right spot at the right time. Great behind the back pass from Donville, gets a score from Caputo, puts us up 9-7. That was a great goal. You were right there in line for it, weren't you?
Oh yeah. It was fun to see, and Phil Caputo, I think pretty much every season he's played with the team, small sample size in the big scheme of things, but I think he's led the team in power play goals each season, and so he's certainly off to a good start this year. It was one of those trademark Donnie to what do they call him, Uncle Phil?
Yeah, Uncle Phil.
One of those great goals. So it was good to see him going. It was, as we alluded to, it was good to see someone else on offense be able to contribute.
Well, and at that point, I was like, okay, good. We got a little bit of space. We're up 9-7. this should be the part like last week where we start to pull away. But Vegas, man, they did not agree with that sentiment. They kept things very physical. And in fact, it was right after I mentioned about the whole comparison between Donville and Hannah that they talked about on the broadcast. I was like, oh, that's cool. They were talking about that, and then literally like 5 seconds later, Hannah scores, keeps them close, 9-8.
Yeah. Jack Hanna's a very talented scorer and player, and up to this point, he had been quiet on offense, certainly in the scoring column. So you knew it was only a matter of time before he would put some points up on the board.
Yeah, and so I mean that kept him within a point, and then not a few minutes later, again Vegas scored 9-9. I mean we're under 5 minutes left in the game, and it's 9-9, and I'm like, okay, well, come on offense, let's figure this out. But Will Malcolm, you know, he likes to show up at the last minute, and with under 2 minutes left, he gets the score, puts us up 10-9. At that point, it was like, okay, hey. Will Malcolm showed up. I'm glad he got his goal. Now we just need the defense to keep them away.
Yeah, there was a collective. We were happy, but there was almost like a collective sigh of relief in the arena when Will scored, because you're thinking, oh, okay, great. He's showing up. There's less than 2 minutes. All we got to do is play solid from here on out, and we should get the W.
And let's be honest here. The defense did play good. I mean, the last 2 minutes, they kept the ball away. They did what they were supposed to. I felt like they did pretty much everything they could. But Vegas, being just like a crazy team this year, apparently, they had the ball went back, and the guy went back, and there was 10 seconds left, and he pushed it forward, and like we foreshadowed earlier, it was a great shot, and it was a great block.
Yes.
But unfortunately, it just wasn't enough to keep the ball out of the goal. With 0.8 seconds left, they get a goal, tying it 10-10. Again, I wasn't there live. You were there live. I mean, the first thing I thought of was, did the time run out before it crossed the line?
Yeah, that's what we were all hoping for. When we were looking up at the Jumbotron for the replay, it's like, maybe it was too late. There was a challenge by Coach TK last week in the win on the road against was it Vancouver?
Yeah,
where they challenged something, and it was like, oh, he released it after the shot clock went off. In this case, you only need the clock to expire before it crosses the plane. So we were just really hoping for something like that, but unfortunately, he got it off in time, and those goals where Nick is able to get a piece of it, but not block it completely. Oftentimes, those end up with a defenseman actually kind of diving towards the ball too, trying to keep it out from crossing the plane. So it was just, we were in shock. And,
oh yeah, I mean, yeah. I'm sitting here. I was unfortunately, stuck at home that day, and I was just like, "You have got to be kidding me!" 0.8 seconds, and they get a goal and tie it up to go into overtime. And it's one of those things that it can deflate a team really fast. And I hate to say that's kind of what happened, but it's like they had this mentality of, hey, we're going to win. Our defense is playing good. We're going to win. And then something crazy like that happens. And it was a good learning point for Panther City. I hate to say that now, but I think in the future, now they know, hey, we can't leave any time left. We can't leave anything to chance. We got to finish this within the 4 quarters that we're allowed, because once overtime started, I think we got a few chances, but Vegas, I think they just rode that momentum. They got that goal. They tied it up. They went to overtime. They said, okay, well, we got lucky on that one. We're not going to leave this one to luck. And only about 3 minutes into overtime, they got a great shot on goal, scored. I know, even watching on TV, like the team just looked like deflated is the best way I can describe it.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because the defense and Dame, you just they played really well for most of the game. They even, on the Jumbotron and during a timeout, they actually showed a compilation of all the great saves that Damute had. And again, there were a lot of plays that defense is always the unsung hero of the game. They're not going to get the shine the same way that offensive players will. So all things considered, they held Las Vegas to a margin that in a lot of cases will win you games, but I don't know, just there were just unlucky bounces, and you couple that with the offense just never really clicking throughout. I know there was one possession, at least one possession during the overtime when Panther City had the ball, but Josh Medeiros just seemed kind of out of sorts, which is very unlike him, in the middle or something. So, and I don't think we even got a shot off. He probably got decked to the ground or something. So it was just kind of symbolic or representative of how things were going for the team way too often than it needed to be to get the win.
Yeah. So, Vegas gets the goal in overtime. They win 11-10. It was a very exciting game. Again, a game that I think should have been highlighted, maybe more on ESPN2 or ESPN News or whatever. Just get more eyes on it. But very exciting game. It just didn't go our way. You know what? I'll touch on this real quick. There was a few quotes after the game, and this is what I was kind of alluding to. But Coach TK after the loss, I mean, he's like, any loss is a tough loss. I think from my perspective, it is about maybe grounding our guys a little bit. I don't know if maybe we thought we had arrived and guys were happy where they were, but that's not our MO. It's not how we've operated our last 2 years, and certainly not how we're going to operate moving forward. I think he kind of felt, and you mentioned it at the end of last week when we were talking about our expectations. Vegas maybe is our little brother, and I think they kind of thought, oh, hey, we should be able to handle this, and they didn't.
Yeah, it's eventually that little brother's going to grow up too. And unfortunately for us, Vegas almost, you could say they grew up against us in that game. It's a long season. It remains to be seen, but they're certainly going to have momentum going into the future, whereas Panther City, unfortunately, has a bye week and then greets one of the elite teams in the East that we haven't played before on the 22nd in Toronto. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how guys react to this. I'm sure Coach TK and Toll and the offense coordinator, I feel bad. I don't remember his name off the top of my bat. I'm sure they'll get the guys as prepped as they can. But, yeah, this is going to sting for a while.
Well, yeah, and it definitely, even like we talked about from the defensive side, Matt Hossack after the game, I mean, he was quoted in saying, it just never sits well with you, and it's not going to sit well with this group. I mean, it's not how we're wired. I really expect the defense to kind of go back to say, the drawing board a little bit and say, where are those slight things that we missed this last game, because we don't want that to happen again. So I really expect the defense to kind of pick up their game. Now it's on the offensive side, and I know that's something you said we shouldn't worry about too much after last week's performance, after our performance in Vancouver, I should say. But after this week, I think it's something we got to keep an eye on going forward. Well, I mean, of course, this game had a lot of exciting moments. It had a great back and forth matchup between both teams. But that's not to say there wasn't a lot of good stats that happened during this game. And of course leads us to Mr. Andrew's stats of the game. Mr. Andrew, what interesting stats do you have for us against Las Vegas?
A lot of interesting ones. I'll start with the good. We did a solid job killing off of penalties. I think Las Vegas had 5 power plays, and we only allowed 1 goal out of them, so pretty good mark. Unfortunately, even if the man-down defense is strong, they got to work on limiting those penalties, because when you're a man down on offense, that's going to be hampered probably more severely than you would playing solid defense. So you want to get those limited. As we mentioned, Nick Damey did a solid job in net again. He saved 44 out of 55 shots that came his way. So 80%, pretty solid number. Again, a lot of those were just unlucky bounces that eventually got past him one way or another. I think after last week's 86.5% showing, he's probably still leading the league in save percentage, unless someone else went absolutely bonkers in week 2. So it was nice to see him do that. Unfortunately, Landon Kells was even better. He saved 46 out of 56 shots for an 82% save percentage. That's pretty good for a guy who was stuck behind Christian Delbianco for an entire year his rookie season. So I'm sure he's loving getting playing time these past 2 years for this growing by leaps and bounds Vegas team. Unfortunately, I'll probably end with 2 not so stellar statistics. As we mentioned, Panther City pretty much got destroyed on faceoffs. They only won 4 of 24, which is 1/6 of the faceoffs there were. Hopefully Tyler Burton gets better soon. Hopefully until then the guys that they do want to experiment with and put in there can get a bit of faceoff practice in. Again, people are kind of torn on how effective face-offs are in the big scheme of things during an entire game. However, one stat that I think is tied to this is that we had 0 transition goals from the transition players in this game. Tony didn't get any, Medi didn't get any, Goodwin didn't get any. Someone on offense might have gotten just 1 from what I remember, but face-offs aren't necessarily going to be the deciding factor in whether you score in transition or not, but they certainly don't hurt. So losing out on 20 of the 24 in a game isn't going to do you any favors.
Yeah, and it just goes to show you just the uncertainty that's in that position right now. I mean, if you're switching out players and just trying different things, you need consistency, and we haven't had consistency at that position for a while, and so hopefully that's something we can again figure out as the year goes on. Hopefully sooner rather than later, because like you said, even if it's not the thing that's going to make or break a game, it is something that I think can help a team's momentum. If you're consistently losing face-offs, then it's just like anything else. You're going to start to feel a certain way, and you're going to start to get kind of bummed out about it. And you're going to be like, dang, are we ever going to win one? And so, it's statistically, again, not the thing that's going to make you win a game, but it is a part of the game, and it's a part of the game that I think does matter in the big scheme of things.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm a sucker for transition goals to begin with. So maybe I'm putting too much stock into it. But yeah, that's certainly, I mean, it's almost like special teams in football. Like, you don't really think about it unless you need it or you're not doing so well in that department. But hopefully they can shore that stuff up, and hopefully I didn't go directly into offensive stuff so much. Shout out to Kyle Goundry. He's the offensive coordinator. Whose name I can't think of, but
there you go.
Yeah, hopefully they can get things rolling against Toronto.
Yeah. Well, of course, that's Mr. Andrews' stats of the game. Thank you for those. That, of course, brings us to our Cool Cat plays of the game. I mean, obviously, there were a few different ones in this game because of how back and forth it was, but there's one I'll give credit to, and it's that Caputo goal just because it was so fun to watch. But mine is Sheridan for the second game in a row. Again, just being that physical presence, pushing through, diving in, gets that great goal that put us up 8-7 at the time. But man, he's the rookie I didn't expect to see making a difference so far, and he showed up 2 games in a row. So that's my play of the game. What about for yourself?
I too have to give credit to that Caputo power play goal. It's always nice to see us score and take advantage of the opponent's penalties. Crawford had a couple of great plays, well, more than a couple, but the 3 that he scored on were all kind of classic Showtime. I don't want to say that I'm getting dulled to how good he is, but it's almost like if you're a Bulls fan in the 90s and got to see Michael Jordan at home like every other night. You kind of get used to how good this guy is at scoring the ball. But I think for my play, I'm actually going to go with the other rookie, Jason Knox, scoring his first goal off of that great Will Malcolm feed and fake towards the goal to open Knox up.
Yeah, and again, congrats to Knox on getting his first career goal. Hopefully, many more to see as the year goes on. So that's, of course, our cool cat plays of the game, which leads us, even though in a loss, we still have our big cat players of the game. I'll let you go first. Who was your big cat player of this game?
We've talked about him all podcasts long. Tonight isn't going to be any different for me. Got to give props to Callum Crawford, the one guy who really showed up on the offensive side of the ball, and he scored his 1200th point and became the 8th player in NLL history to hit that tally. So congrats to Callum Crawford. I think he's also inching closer to, is it Sean Evans on the scoring list? I don't quite remember, but whoever it is, he might. It's funny oh no, it's not Sean Evans. I think it's another active player who he might coincidentally catch this season. But yeah, great effort in a losing cause. It's just too bad there wasn't a bit more balance in the offense.
Yeah, and it's the same for me. I mean, 2 weeks in a row, Colin Crawford just he knows what to do. He knows what plays to make and how to score. He makes it look so effortlessly sometimes. I mean, that one that you were talking about where he was just kind of slightly moves the handle back and forth just enough to make the defender think, okay, is he going top? Is he going down? Like, it's just those little things that he does that he makes it look so easy. And
right.
I mean, Crawford again for the second game of the row, my big cat player of the game. Again, I think if he keeps this up, he's going to be hitting some milestones pretty soon as the season keeps going. Well, that of course brings us to our final thoughts of the game. There's two thoughts I have, and we'll touch on the first one real quick. Vegas winning, I don't think should be surprising now. Like going forward in this season, I shouldn't be surprised if they start a kind of a winning track going into the season, because you touched on it earlier. They lost last week against Albany. We didn't know at the time, but Albany is a lot better team than we thought they were, because they weren't that good last year. I mean, they were competitive, but they weren't where they are now, because they got that win, and then this week they went against the defending champions, Buffalo, and they beat them. So they're 2-0 on the season, and for a team like Las Vegas to keep it close in a losing effort, I mean, I think that kind of says a lot as far as where they're at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the Desert Dogs started their inaugural season 0-2, courtesy of Panther City. So for them to be 1-1 to be at 500 this early in the year, that's already a step up. And if they're anything like Panther City and Coach TK and whatnot, they're not going to be satisfied with that. And their next game's at home. They've got an interesting schedule coming up. So it'll be interesting. Obviously, this is a Panther City podcast, but it'll be interesting to see what the so-called little brothers in Vegas do the rest of the year.
I like to keep a side eye on them just to see what they're doing, because I feel like they're going to be a team we're going to have to mess with later on in this season. My other thought is, and again, you can touch in on it, but the offense needs to figure something out.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about it through this one, and we talked about it through the last game. Donville and Crawford, they're obviously going to show up every game. Now it's time for the rest of the team to show up. Phil, I'm glad he got a goal in each game. Will Malcolm, I'm glad he got a goal in each game. Now it's time for them to start to pick that up. You talked about transition players and showing up more. That's something else that we're going to have to improve. If we want to contend, for that top spots in the playoffs and get those home games and contend for a championship, these are the things that need to start changing. Our defense, I think our defense is staying pretty steady right now.
Mm-hmm.
which is great. I mean, that's good that they're showing up. But now it's time for that offense to show up as well.
Yeah, that's a great point that you made. It's great to see Caputo score. It's great to see Will Malcolm get a goal. But, at the same time, we're talking about Will Malcolm. We're used to seeing him kind of go crazy in some of these games offensively. So it'll be nice to get him on the board more often than just once a game. I'm hoping that newcomer Ty Thompson is active against Toronto. He's another guy. He's another big-bodied guy along with Knox and Sheridan that we signed. I think he's like either 6'5" or 6'6". And so having that size and physicality should help out in terms of setting picks, keeping the defense honest, pushing guys around. So it'll be good to have him. He's another piece to integrate. I don't know, with knowing how good the Toronto Rock is defensively, I don't know that we would necessarily click in that next game, which we'll get into a little later. But hopefully they can figure something out. And then, like you said, the transition players. Josh Medeiros was voted one of the 10 best in the league, yet has yet to score this year. Now, that might be the opponent's coaching staff and having a good game plan to stop someone that good in transition. But he's got to step up to the challenge and kind of figure out what he can do to get himself back on track. So, yeah, they definitely have their work cut out for them. I think Damien's doing just about as good a job as he can. You're going to have unlucky bounces every now and then. You just got to hope to minimize them, whether it's taking a little hop back into the net and hoping you're not like pushing it further in there or whatnot. So the defense is solid. Obviously, at every aspect of the game the team can improve on. But yeah, it's the offense, certainly by the eye test, seemed like what was struggling against Vegas.
Which is frustrating because I thought the offense did a great job in the first game. And,
right.
And then to come into this one and be like, well, that, a little discombobulated, like you said. Did you have any other final thoughts on this game?
I mean, aside from what we talked about, it was exciting, a bit more defensively oriented, and it had a disappointing finish, especially for being the home opener. I'm hoping that it doesn't come back to bite the team in the butt further on down the line once the standings get a bit more packed.
Yeah, well, and I think this will be a game that they'll learn from, like I said earlier on. And when we see Vegas again, I expect a very different Panther City team to show up. But with that, Panther City is now 1-1. And like you mentioned, they have their bye week coming, so they'll have to sit on this one for 2 weeks until Toronto, which is their next home game. So Toronto Rock will be on the 22nd. It's a Friday night. Toronto coming off of their first win this last weekend against Philadelphia. I mean, what do you think, looking at our next game, what do you think the team, Panther City as a whole, will kind of focus on going into this bye week?
Hopefully offense, but it's going to be a challenge because Toronto only gave up 7 points to Philadelphia in their win this past week. So it'll basically be kind of a test of wills, if you will, to see whether Toronto's stout defense or Panther City's offensive talent wins out. Obviously, as a Panther City fan, you hope that it's the good guys, but yeah, it's gonna be even more of a dogfight than this game against the Desert Dogs was.
Well, and you think this game was like as Panther City fans, you think this game was hard? Like Toronto, is a team we don't have like we said in our season preview, we don't have a ton of experience with, and they're a team that is a force to be reckoned with, or was a force to be reckoned with out east, but now they're a force to be reckoned with across the whole NLL. And so it's going to be hard to keep a good team down like them, especially when they're coming in after our loss, looking to, again, get a win against Panther City against us at home.
I'd like to think that the 4-goal deficit or the 4-goal victory against Philadelphia was a little misleading given that Blaze Riordan of the Wings got injured. Hopefully he comes back to full strength. Wish him the best of luck. As far as Toronto goes, man, they put up a 6-point quarter in
Yeah,
that victory. So we're gonna have our work cut out for us for sure.
right. And that's where, where the defense needs to stay consistent. I think that, again, I really do think the defense has been playing good the last 2 games. It's just a few unlucky bounces here and there. And then, just, again, not having the offense to back them up. But we're relying too much offensively on Crawford and Donville. Now I need, Gauthier. I need Caputo. I need Malcolm. I need Sheridan to get another physical score. So going into this game against Toronto, I guess my expectations are, especially now after this game against Vegas, I don't know. I'm semi worried, just slightly.
You are not alone in that. It's hard to pick against a team that's doing that. I mean, this almost feels like when we had to predict the Calgary games, knowing how good they were coming into town. Same with San Diego the first time we faced them out in California. So,
yeah. I don't know. I hate to say it, but so for predictions wise, I'm gonna say, unfortunately, Panther City does lose this one. And I'm not gonna say it's gonna be an ugly loss. I think it's gonna be another close game, but I do feel like Toronto. I don't know. I just feel like Toronto is just that step above, and they could show up and they could beat us. And so if I was to guess the score, I'd probably say like a 13-10. And I know that's not great, but based on what I've seen from our offense in the last 2 games, I don't know. Can we score more than 10 or 11 points? I don't know. I have yet to see it.
yeah, it's hard to say. And yeah, I'm looking at their roster and their box score against Philly last week. I forgot they signed Mark Matthews in the offseason who puts up a ton of points. So I want to be the optimist and say Panther City will steal this one, but by a razor thin margin, like 8-9.
8-9
or something. I'll say my heart's saying that. My heart as a Panther City fan. My head is thinking it'll be more like 12-8 in favor of Toronto. But I want to go with my heart.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, I want to be wrong. I want to be, anytime, even last year, anytime I said there was a loss, I want to be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But realistically, I could see Toronto coming in and just, they're a team that could easily, like you said, they had a 6-goal quarter last week. They could easily just take over this game at some point, and that can be scary. But if we do the opposite of that, and Panther City shows up and makes those adjustments and pulls up the upset against Toronto, then great. That's where we want to be. That's where we want to keep going on an upward trajectory. We don't want to hit this downward spiral. We don't want this game, this loss against Vegas, create a downward spiral for the next few games. Because that could be very dangerous as the year goes on.
Yeah, definitely so. Sorry, fans, that might not be the most promising look on things, but
I mean, we're optimistic about a lot of things, but who knows what might happen. But that, like I said, that game is on the 22nd. That's a Friday night, so be sure to go out to that. Before we finish this podcast, there are a few quick things I want to touch on. Speaking about this last weekend, not Panther City related, but so the NLL comes out with these weekly shows, these weekly snippets, and one of them was a burning take saying that Buffalo and Colorado will not make the finals this year. And surprise, surprise, in their first weekend of games, both Colorado and Buffalo lost. I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see the new playoff format this year. But man, that's a lot to say right off the bat. Right at the first game of the season, the two teams in the championship last year both lost.
Yeah. As for that burning take, I gotta do the Tom Hardy Mad Max Fury Road meme of that's bait. Colorado tends to kind of sneak in, and then and then kind of run roughshod over all these teams with better records. And then once they get to the playoffs,
Right.
I think there's a chance that they might not make it, but I completely expect Buffalo to, and I'd probably expect Colorado to as well. I think when you make it to the title game, well, I'd like to think that these teams want to make it back there. Of course, hey, if neither of them make it, in theory, that means that's 2 spots left for Panther City
Right.
to nab one. So, like, hey, if it happens and benefits us, that's awesome. But that is absolutely that's a burning take for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Buffalo, I have yet to see Buffalo. Again, I've only been paying super closer attention to them the last few years, but it just seems like they're the team that's always kind of dominating people. And, if you get a win against them, it really means something. That's why seeing Albany beat Buffalo right off the bat like that was kind of crazy to see, but it kind of shows you where Albany is on their track. But yeah, no, it was just kind of interesting how both the teams lost right off the bat, and hopefully, especially against Buffalo, maybe Panther City can use some of their tape, and learn a few things when we go against them next year.
Yeah, hopefully. Man, I am glad that Buffalo game is a home game for us. It'll be fun to see those guys live.
Oh yeah, and I think I'll have to look at it. That might be the same night as like the youth night, so we might have a big group from Oklahoma coming down for that game.
Yeah, all Crawford's kids.
I mean, hey, he might want to show off for him at that point.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, the Mammoth game's a home game too, so we get both finalists or both champions from the past 2 seasons in our house.
Yeah, let's hope the home field is an advantage this year, not a curse. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting. I want to touch on that. There is no game obviously this weekend, but we have a special episode next week coming out where both me and Andy got to visit Lacrosse Unlimited here in Plano. Got to talk to the owner. Well, I don't think he's the owner of that one, but he's the manager of that location, Isaac. So had a really good evening with him. Got to talk about his business, how he got started. So look out for that special episode. But of course, be sure to check out all of our content, all of our social media. We're of course on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of our videos on YouTube. And again, thank everybody for listening. Of course, I am once again Nicholas.
And I'm once again Andy.
And we'll see you in a few weeks when Toronto comes to town. So we'll see y'all then.
Yep, should be a doozy. Cheers, y'all.